September 1963, a man called Richard Case Nagel walked into a bank in El Paso, Texas, and fired 3 shots into the wall. He then sat down outside the bank and waited to be arrested. When the police came for him, he surrendered peacefully, telling them he wanted to be in federal custody because the President of the United States was shortly to be assassinated, and he did not want to be the patsy when the assassination occurred. Nagel was a U.S. Army intelligence agent, and, if we can believe a new book about him, also a Soviet spy. That in itself is not implausible. Double agents with questionable loyalties are the stuff of John le Carré novels and of actual spycraft. Consider our own Kim Philby or Anthony Blunt. Agents are always being turned and working for both sides simultaneously. What's interesting about Nagel's claims, reported in the book The Man Who Knew Too Much by the American journalist Dick Russell, is that he says Lee Harvey Oswald was a double agent too. You don't have to believe all of what Nagel says. He's a slippery customer. He served several years in jail for bank robbery, although he made no actual attempt to rob the bank. And he was later arrested by Stasi agents on the wrong side of the old East German border and exchanged for one of their top spies. But for the record, Nagel says that he, Oswald, and a number of other military men were sent by U.S. Army or Naval intelligence to various Iron Curtain countries posing as defectors. Their mission was to win the confidence of their KGB or Stasi minders, plant false information, and come back with the real goods. In the case of Lee Oswald, the real goods might even have been Marina, the woman whom he married there. She was the niece of a high-ranking Russian intelligence colonel whom the West was anxious to have defect. Nagel says that he himself became uncertain of his loyalties. He alleges Oswald, a mediocre marksman whom the Marines had uncharacteristically taught to speak Russian, actually went over to the other side and returned to the United States a Soviet agent, just as the right-wing conspiracists always said he was, in fact. Now, on the 30th anniversary of the JFK assassination, we're presented with TV documentaries and books like Case Closed and Conspiracy of One, which, surprise, surprise, reveal that Oswald really did act all alone. He wasn't a spy at all. Not for them, not for us. He didn't have any friends or co-conspirators. I really find it risible to see these CIA and KGB men shaking their heads and saying, "Ah, he was a nut. We had nothing to do with him." Well, what do you think they're going to say? These men are paid professional spies, employers of assassins and killers. I question the common sense of any TV or print reporter who journeys to Minsk or Langley, Virginia, pokes a camera in the face of Lee Harvey Oswald's case officer, and expects to get the true truth out of the guy. It's a trifle naive, to say the least. The true truth about the JFK assassination was probably known to most of the major intelligence organizations within a few days, if not a few hours, of its occurrence. Which brings us to the Parallax View, a feature film directed in 1974 by Alan J. Pakula. In it, Warren Beatty and Paula Prentice play 2 reporters in Seattle. A lone assassin murder atop the Space Needle sets them thinking, what if the assassin didn't act alone? What if a conspiracy was involved? In this case, the murder itself seems modeled on the Robert Kennedy assassination, with its gun-wielding waiter, its elusive second assassin, and even a briefly glimpsed girl in a polka-dot dress. The aftermath, however, is pure JFK, a Warren Commission-style cover-up, followed by a series of mysterious deaths of witnesses and journalists. The JFK murder really was rough on reporters and witnesses. The catalogue of witnesses who died from heart attacks, car and plane crashes, gun accidents, karate chops to the neck, etc., is very long and justly notorious. What's less known is the small core of journalists who lost their lives investigating the case. Tonight, Paula Prentice plays a reporter clearly based on the popular American columnist Dorothy Killigan, the only journalist allowed a private interview with Jack Ruby, who died of an overdose of alcohol and barbiturates after publishing several articles indicating a conspiracy was involved. 2 other reporters who dug into the Jack Ruby story also died, one of them shot in the head by a patrolman in Long Beach City Police Headquarters. The Parallax View was co-written by Lorenzo Semple Jr., who penned the equally paranoid 3 Days of the Condor, along with the early Batman TV shows. He has a fine, dark sense of humor, as in the scene where Beatty finds himself aboard a plane that's carrying a bomb. The excellent CinemaScope photography is by Gordon Willis, who also shot The Godfather and many of Woody Allen's films. The parallax view was influential both on Pakula's own All the President's Men and on Oliver Stone's JFK, which revitalized the media's interest in the Kennedy assassination and contributed to the release of a large quantity of doctored U.S. government files. An uncharitable listener might suggest that John Williams' soundtrack for JFK was not uninfluenced by Michael Small's excellent musical score for Parallax View. Pakula's film inevitably refers to the Manchurian Candidate, that prophetic tale of double agents, brainwashing and political assassination magnificently filmed by John Frankenheimer in 1962. Interestingly, Frankenheimer also made a film about an attempted military coup in the United States, 7 Days in May, the same year Kennedy was killed. Who done it? In tonight's film, a mysterious company called the Parallax Corporation appears to be hiring hitmen and patsies in order to commit perfect political crimes. Jim Garrison, the New Orleans DA, who was the hero of Oliver Stone's movie, actually accused the Canadian-based company Permindex of doing much the same thing, hiring political hitmen to kill Kennedy and to attempt to kill de Gaulle. 70% of the adult American population believe their president was murdered by a conspiracy. Who was behind the conspiracy depends on the political and social inclinations of the person that you talk to. Right-wingers still claim from time to time that Khrushchev or Castro did it, via their commie protege Oswald. Almost everyone in Texas seems to think that Lyndon Johnson had a hand in it. People on the left are not slow to point out that Richard Nixon flew out of Dallas on the morning President Kennedy died. There's tremendous circumstantial evidence that the mafia was involved, not least the use of mafia hitman Ruby to silence the alleged assassin. Mark Lane and Jim Garrison always said the CIA did it. Kennedy didn't like the CIA, they said, because it led him into a political fiasco at the Bay of Pigs. He threatened to splinter it into 1,000 pieces, and he fired CIA head Allen Dulles and Deputy Director Charles P. Cabell, whose brother was the mayor of Dallas on the fateful day. It's possible. But the thesis of Dick Russell's book, The Man Who Knew Too Much, presents a new version. The CIA, says Russell, was by the early 60s pretty thoroughly infiltrated by the Russians. Remember, CIA is theoretically a civilian body which has fought turf wars with the US military since its inception in 1947. Russell speculates that the clues pointing towards CIA as culprits in the assassination were in fact false, laid there by Texas oil men and an extreme right-wing faction in the US military. This group, stretching beyond the United States, in fact an international fascist cabal, had the president killed. They picked Oswald as the patsy, Russell says, because he had intelligence fingerprints all over him. American, Soviet, and remember he was also a paid informant of the Dallas FBI. He was the perfect fall guy, disgruntled, alienated, knowing just a little bit too much. His death, and that of a few witnesses, satisfies the different power groups, allowing them to maintain much of their status, while the conspirators move a little higher up the ladder and settle comfortably into place. If it was a coup, it was something of a gentlemanly one, compared to the bloodshed following Pinochet's takeover of Chile or Sukarno's reign of terror in Indonesia. All quite civilized, except for those witnesses, of course, and to Dorothy Killigan.